Hello, welcome back. So, in today's session, we are looking at the Germany GCSE unit. So, we're going to do a bit of an overview of what happens in this unit just to keep it fresh in our minds. So, you could start by doing the knowledge quiz on the Google form, which is 10 multiple choice questions just to keep that knowledge fresh in our heads. So, let's recap the Germany unit. So remember, the Germany unit, we are looking at 1819 to 1945. So we start with a life under the Kaiser, so the German emperor. We looked at his policy of having a big navy and his determination to get a big empire, which led to the sort of competition between Britain and Germany in terms of international position. We looked at the naval laws, which saw them both competing as to who could have the biggest navy. We also then looked at the impacts of World War One on Germany. Now, after World War One, of course, the Kaiser abdicates, which leaves the government without any clear authority, leaving a fragile country in the hands of the Allied powers as they sign the Treaty of Versailles. Now, as we know, many Germans are incredibly angry about the signing of the new treaty. They feel that the new government is stabbing them in the back. Many Germans, remember, believe that they could have won the war if they'd been allowed to carry on fighting. And they are devastated that their politicians have signed a treaty which they see as crippling. Now, remember, the treaty means that they have to reduce the size of their army, they lose land, they have to take complete blame for the war, and they also have to pay that huge reparations sum. Now, we look then at life in the Weimar Republic. So, the setting up of the Weimar Republic, the creation of the Weimar Constitution, the challenges which Germany face when they are creating an increasingly democratic society, which saw for the first time both men and women being able to vote. We then look at the achievements of Gustav Stresemann as both Chancellor and Foreign Minister, particularly looking at his work on Germany's economy, so things like the Dawes Plan, and as well as his work looking at Germany's standing in international society. This period is often seen as a bit of a golden age due to the changes that are going on, not only in the economy and the international society, but things like advances in film, radio, fashion, music, and architecture. We then move on to look at the impacts of the Great Depression. Now, as we know from our last session, the Great Depression had a devastating impact on the world economy, particularly in Germany, and it ultimately aided Hitler's rise to power. And then our final part of the Germany GCSE unit was looking at life in Nazi Germany under Hitler's new regime. So we look at how people's lives have changed, the impacts of propaganda and a dictatorship, and how that impacted on the German populace. We looked at Hitler's beliefs and aims and how they affected policy making before touching on World War II and its aftermath. Please don't panic if some of this sounds like I haven't done this in a long time. We have been looking at some of this during lockdown, but we also did this back at the start of year 9. So we're just refreshing our memory. Now, there is a video you can watch on BBC Bitesize. There is a link on the Google Classroom, which does a quick 4-minute recap of this entire period. So you have some tasks today to help you recapping the Germany unit. You've got a brief timeline of the Germany course. Now, for each event, you need to decide if it's economic, political, social, or to do with international/foreign policy. Now, you can use the key that has been done for you using the highlighter function if you're doing this on the Google Doc, or you can do this in your summer workbook. Now, an example of each of these has been done for you just to show you what we're looking for. Your next task is an 8-mark question. Which factor do you think will have the biggest impact on Germany during this period? Explain your answer in full sentences. Now, you need to look at the economic, social, political, or even international. You're picking one of those. But this is your own opinion. There is not a right answer. You just need evidence to support your argument. So make sure you use your color-coded timeline to help you. Try and use Peel in your answer. So we should end up with about 2 Peel paragraphs, and try and aim for 3 sentences of explanation. You could use tat. So this means or shows that, as a result, therefore, to help expand your explanation. Now, your final task is about this source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly talk you through this source in a little bit more detail, which will hopefully help you in answering this 4-mark question. So what does this source tell us about Hitler's plans once he was in power? So this source is by British cartoonist David Lowe and appeared in the Evening Standard newspaper on the 9th of September 1938. Now, David Lowe did a lot of political cartoons, particularly around this time, and they are quite often featured in some of our history lessons and even in the exam. So we've got Hitler on the left in front of a Nazi flag, waving a sheet of paper marks the idea. On the sheet of paper, it says, "All Germans everywhere are mine." Now, Hitler is in quite an aggressive, confident stance, and we can infer from this that Hitler is trying to get more power. Now, the paper which says, "Idea, all Germans everywhere are mine," we can link this into Hitler's idea that he wants to reunite Germans across the world. Remember, one of his aims when he comes to power is to unite all German-speaking people. Now, how do you unite all German-speaking people? Well, you quite simply have to invade other countries. That's the only way that is going to happen. But you could also link this in with the idea of Lebensraum, so living space. Hitler wants to expand Germany so that all Germans have somewhere to live. We then have a line of ghosts behind Hitler who are all holding plaques with countries on. So Hitler is starting close to home. We can see that the first sign is Polish Germans. We then move on to Hungarian, Romanian, Danish, Swiss, Alsace, Italian, and then we go to the British, and then right at the back you can see America. So Hitler is starting close to home and then going further and further out, taking over other countries. So he's gradually expanding his empire. We can then see that the signs are labelled crisis. So David Lowe is trying to show everyone that Hitler is going to cause more problems for the world. Countries need to be ready. Now, at this time, we've had a policy of appeasement going on, and David Lowe did quite a few cartoons trying to show politicians that appeasement simply wasn't working. They need to be ready. They need to be ready to act because Hitler is not going to stop from appeasement below. Right at the back, you can see that the ghosts include America, and a little bit further forward, you have Britain. So Hitler's eventually going to use his excuse to unite all the Germans to attack the Allied powers. So Lowe is basically saying, you need to be ready. Now, you can also see the bottom of the cartoon, it says down here, nightmare waiting list. Effectively, Lowe is saying, we are waiting for Hitler to attack us. He's going to do it. We have to be prepared. So your final task in this session is to answer the 4-mark question. Now, you can do this on the Google Doc, or you can do this in your summer workbook. But what does the source tell us about Hitler's plans once he was in power? Make sure you're doing this in full sentences. Please make sure that you use evidence from the source to back up your argument. So you must mention what you can see in the source. So this is your final task. Once you have done this, if you've done it on the Google document in the Google Classroom, please make sure you submit it. If you've done it on your workbook, well done. Thank you for your work today, and we will see you soon.